Hello again, my name is Jason Titcomb with LMGI in South Portland, Maine. Continuing with the SolidEdge Fundamentals course, I'm going to open an existing file in the fundamentals. It comes from this activity. When you do this activity, it'll reinforce some of the things we've already talked about a little bit, but I want to show you a little bit more detail about this before you go ahead and do it. So this is called sketch A, and we'll open that. I don't like the gray background. This is persisted in the file. If you right click, there's a background override. You can change that to a solid white or whatever you want. You also can set the material. The material table can be accessed right here. If I right click and choose something more interesting like aluminum 1060, not only will it set the physical properties, but it sets the face style as well. So that's a little more fun. So right click right over here and you'll see that there's the material table in its complete form can be accessed here. You might do self-study on that, hit the help on it, but this is essentially where you can apply your material. You can even do this from assembly. You can apply it to multiple parts. There's a way, if you forgot to put your materials in by the time you build your assembly, there's one tool that can push all those materials down in there for you. So this is a synchronous model. I can see because it says synchronous in the bar. So this was created using the synchronous modeling technique, so there is no history. The protrusion that you see here in Pathfinder is simply a set of faces that existed at the time that feature was created, and the cutout is essentially any remaining faces that existed. This can be very useful, so it is somewhat feature-based, even though there is no history. If you can in fact just drag and drop things around over here, if I take the top level protrusion and drag it, you see it has no impact at all on the solve of the model. So what controls this model now is the dimensions that exist, right? And these are PMI dimensions. They kind of turn on automatically when you touch a face, which is a really nice feature. So if you touch just this face, you'll only get the dimensions that make sense for that face. If I touch this face, I'll only get the dimensions that make sense for that. So that we are going to do a deep dive on synchronous modeling, but I'm just kind of trickling in some information as we go forward. So here I'd like to just discuss a little bit more about establishing a plane. So when you start a sketching tool in synchronous mode and I hover over an existing face, we already talked about the little padlock a little bit, and we did talk about the green line, but I want to kind of reinforce that a little bit. If you look in the prompt, you'll see that there's some reminders of the keystrokes, but if I tap N on the keyboard, you see how it cycles to the next edge, and there's the next edge, and there's the next edge. This becomes your x-axis orientation for the geometry you're about to draw. So when I click this and lock, now I can go and draw a little shape here, and again this is synchronous mode, but it's just a little shape. And to be honest with you, because in synchronous mode it doesn't really establish a plane by moving the model, like this automatically, Control H. Sometimes you won't notice that your plane is 90 degrees off. You might not notice it until you start to place dimensions, and the dimensions will appear to be vertical instead of readable. You'll have to lie down on your desk to read your dimensions, and that would be an indication that your plane orientation is probably 90 degrees off, and that is easy to do, but that's how the software does it. So when you start a sketching command, so I start rectangle command, now I'm previously locked to that face, and that might throw you for a second. So if you click that button to release the lock, you can now hover over a different face, and the software will usually find the face that is the most horizontal. So you see it's finding that So the best general advice is to get the model rotated, looking at the face generally the way you want to sketch on it, and then lock, and then do your Control H, and you can, and I'm using my alignment indicators here to get lined up as my rectangle by center. So that is just a little bit more about how planes are established. And if we took a look at this in ordered mode to see what that workflow would be like, I'm going to right click and transition to ordered. And let's say I wanted to make a sketch or a cutout. Either one would flow the same way. If I start the sketch command, you'll see it wants me to create a coincident plane, or in other words, just click a face. If I start the extrude command and hover over this face, again, it'll want me to choose a plane to draw. I'll draw within the command versus drawing a simple sketch. I'm going to do just sketches now to keep things kind of simple. But you see the same green edge. Hopefully you can see that. And if I tap N on the keyboard, you do get a little bit more indication as to the orientation. That little extra square on the plane indicates the lower left of the x-axis. I kind of wish that was in the synchronous mode as well. Maybe someday they'll put that back in. I think a couple of people have asked for that. So then you click, and remember, in ordered mode, it automatically squares to the screen unless you turn that setting off, and you can certainly do that. There is no setting for synchronous to automatically do it. It's just the way they wrote the software. And then you would draw, and then you have to close out of Flatland, and then you're back, and there's your sketch, and you can hit finish. So that's kind of just a little bit different workflow, and now you see that you have a synchronous branch in the tree. And then I actually made an ordered feature in the tree. And this is a really powerful capability of the software, the way that you can mix, and you can even right click. We will cover this later, and you can move existing ordered geometry to synchronous history free, and it gives you the freedom to edit it without any concern for the way that it was modeled. You're just interacting directly with the model, so that can be a huge productivity boost when it comes time to do these small engineering changes, and you go into an ordered feature tree to make a change. I know you've all seen this, all you guys that have used SolidWorks or Inventor. You go in, you make a change, and the tree just falls apart. It breaks downstream features, and then you have to go into troubleshoot mode. We're going to talk about that more, but this capability to take an existing feature and move it into the history-free synchronous mode, and then you just simply click the face and make the edit. It's just that easy, and we will cover that in great detail as we continue on. Again, trickling in information here a little bit at a time. So you can continue with this next activity, get what you can out of the script in the book. Books are a tough way to read. It's tough to read and understand where they want you to go. So maybe look a few pages ahead sometimes to see where you're going in the book, and then come back to the script and get the most out of that you can.